Again, we're working with statistics from 8th grade. So now we have a two-way table. Shows data from one group as it relates to two categories. Okay, right now we're not going to start with the two-way table. We're going to start with some data and talk about it. Okay? The same information from a Venn diagram can be shown in a two-way table. So it says, ooh, this should say 440, I think. The survey from the data from the survey of 440 students, typo on my part, I think that's what it is, are shown in the table. We need to place it into our Venn diagram. Somebody tell me where these numbers go in my Venn diagram. The table is going into... Nope, I'm pretty sure it's 440. Nope, it's 440. Okay, where do my numbers go? Sophia? So here, 115, okay? Here, okay? Okay. Is that it? Nope. Miles? Where, how'd you get 30?
Because 440 minus all of those. 450. It's 410. Yeah. It's 410.
How about you guys stop interrupting and listen to Miles? Continue.
Okay, so since it's 440 students, if you add all those together, it's 410.
Yep.
440 minus 410 is 30. So 30 people are on.
Very good. So we need to represent those 30 people still somehow. So where do I put them? Just on the outside. Those 30 kids are not on the honor roll, nor do they play a sport, but they still impacted our survey. So yes, I understand that added to 410 intentionally. Okay? This same information can be displayed in a two-way table. So basically every kid was asked, are you on the honor roll or are you not on the honor roll? And every kid was asked, do you play a sport? Do you not play a sport? So how do I put these numbers now into this chart? Thatcher.
So the first spot is...
Are you talking here?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, what number you want there?
If they're both on the honor roll and they play a sport, they're going to...
So what number is that?
250.
250? Agree or disagree, everyone?
Agree.
Okay.
And then go one below that, and then that's if they just play sport.
Okay.
That's 45.
45, okay.
Then we'll go over. So not on the honor roll and not play sport. Now 30.
Okay.
And then on the honor roll but don't play sport is 150.
Thoughts? Do you like his placements? Well, what about these totals? You add them. 250 plus 115 is 365. 45 plus 30, 75. Let's go down. 250 and 45, 295. 115 and 30, 145. 365 and 75, 440. Now, how could you double check this number? Go across here, right? 295 and 145. Really, could you have filled this in based on the information they gave you too? Okay, very good. Two-way tables, vertically will give you a total, as well as horizontally will give you a total as well. And they're easy ways to check yourself. Now, we have to be very cautious when we're reading. Okay, when we're reading and they give us this in sentence format instead of just a table, it's going to be a tad trickier. So we look at the next one. There are 150 children at the summer camp, and 71 signed up for swimming. There were a total of 62 children that signed up for canoeing, and 28 of them also signed up for swimming. Construct a two-way table summarizing the data. Any ideas where some numbers go? Clearly, we're going to use 150, 71, 62, and 28. Miss Cassidy.
28 goes in both swimming and canoeing.
Top left, here. I just want to double check that I'm putting in the right spot. Okay.
71 would be the total by the swimming,
There.
and 62 would be the total,
Here. Okay.
and 150 is the overall total.
Thoughts? 150 children at summer camp. At this point, do you know anything about them? No. So I know there's a total of 150 kids there. 71 signed up for swimming. Those that signed up for swimming, do I have any idea what they chose for canoeing? No. So swimming, I don't know how to split them up, but I know there's 71. There were 62 children that signed up for canoeing. At that point in the sentence, do you know about their swimming choice? Canoeing 62. 28 of them, of those canoers, also signed up for swimming. Nicely done. So how do I fill in these boxes? Add and subtract. Fill them in. Let's double check. You do it on your own, and we'll double check. Add and subtract to get those numbers filled in there. I've told you guys many times, subtraction is my worst operation. Did I get those numbers correct? I have to tell you a funny one. So the other day, Mr. Olson put on a breakout escape room for the staff after school. It was a ton of fun. And so we found these different things, and we were trying to figure out what order they were going in. And at the bottom, I realized there was little math expressions down there. And they're like, oh, math teacher, do these, and then we'll know what order they go in. The last one that I had, I assumed it was 1 because I had a 2, a 3, a 4, and a 5. So I assumed it was a 1, but I don't want to make any assumptions, obviously not an escape room thing. So I do, and I go, Mr. Olson, you did this wrong. You got a negative number because I was subtracting, redid it by adding first, and it was 1. And so they all made fun of me because I said, I even told my kids I'm terrible at subtraction. I can add, I'm terrible at subtraction. So always double check yourself. Yikes. Do you still trust me to teach you? Okay. Relative frequency is the blank of the value to the value of the total. What word do you think should go there? Is the ratio. Relative frequency is the ratio of the subtotal to the total. Ratio is a fancy word for a fraction. You are going to compare, and this makes sense, subtotal to the total. Agreed? Now, relative frequencies, you can analyze possible associations between the two things that we're talking about. So below, you'll find the number of students that do or do not do chores at home, and then whether or not they receive an allowance. Find and interpret the relative frequency of students in the survey by column and round to the nearest 100. Okay, here's a little computer class for you. Which direction do columns run? Up and down. Up and down. Just like a column that's holding. I said, which way did a column run? Well, even if you read a column, you should be reading it from top to bottom. Okay, columns run vertically. So we are going to be dealing with the allowance. The allowance. So we need to take the subtotal to the total in the allowance category. So allowance and chores, what's my subtotal? What's my partial? Subtotal, partial, 13 out of total number of kids that get allowance. How many total kids get allowance? Maybe we should put 18 in that total column. That'll help us, right? So our allowance is 13 out of 18. If you divide that, round it to the, not if you, please divide that and round to the nearest hundredth. 0.72. Okay. So continue down the allowance column. What's my no chores partial or subtotal? 5 divided by my total, 18, which is 2.8. Continue down. 18 out of 18 would be 1.00. Now, how could you double check that you made these calculations correctly? They add up to, not 100, 1. They add up to 1. Okay, you do the no allowance column on your own. Do the no allowance column on your own. Subtotal divided by total. %. So I had a total of 7 kids that don't receive allowance, correct? Okay. So kids that don't receive allowance and do chores is 3 out of 7, which is 4.3. And don't do allowance and don't do chores is? Everybody agree with that rounding? Okay. Because you're going by column, you do not have to do the total column. If you're going by row, you don't have to do the total row. So when we talk about this, let me sneak a second here. Okay, when we talk about this, one thing that I want to talk about here is why would we ever look at relative frequencies? Relative frequencies can tell us where things are more likely to happen or less likely to happen. If they're more likely to happen, are they going to have a higher relative frequency or a lower? Higher. The more frequent it is, the higher the number is going to be. So if we look, other than our ones, obviously, what's our highest frequency? Allowance and chores right here. Does everybody see that? So if you were going to describe to me what your findings mean, because we went by column, we would talk about this first. So I would say, do you guys agree 0.72 is over the majority? Right? The majority of kids that receive an allowance have to do chores. Follow me? We're describing these two because we're talking about this box here. It's talking about the kids. Yes, they get allowance and yes, they get chores. But we would say, because it goes by column, we would talk about the allowance first. Because we're only comparing allowance kids to allowance kids. If I said, out of the kids that don't receive the allowance, the majority of them don't do chores. Out of this column, what's the higher frequency? 0.57, right? So most of the kids that don't get an allowance also don't have to do chores. Savannah. Oh, perfect. That is mine. Thank you. Okay, two-way tables. Adding and subtracting and relative frequencies. Double check every single calculation that you have today. Okay? I have a worksheet for you that is due at the start of the class tomorrow.